Hello, my dudes. My name is Tiffany, and because today is President's Day, I thought it would be a good time to get political. And I just want to say, Bernie Sanders for president. I have been a big supporter of Bernie's since 2015. I voted for him in 2016, and I am voting for him again this time around. So in this video, I hope to convince any of you adult US citizens to register and vote for Bernie in the primary. I'm going to address some questions and concerns and explain why I believe Bernie is the best choice. In short, Bernie Sanders is the frontrunner in the 2020 Democratic primary. He's been voted the most popular senator. He is the top fundraiser. He's polling to do well in the next caucuses and primaries, and that momentum is likely to make him even more popular. Now, first of all, I know that some people think the #1 rule of YouTube is don't get political, but I disagree. And though my video topics aren't overtly political, I do believe that politics connects into almost every issue, and I'm sure that my leftist perspective does bleed through my content, and I have dropped some very obvious hints about my Bernie support. But I'm making this video because this election and these issues are incredibly important to me, and I think that it is very important for me to use my platform to at least encourage people to get involved in the political process. You may be wondering, who is the most electable? I just want to beat Trump. Okay, who is electable in terms of who can win the Democratic nomination? Bernie. He won New Hampshire, and he also got the most votes in Iowa. Now, the Iowa caucus was a mess, a disaster, and there are still some outstanding errors in terms of delegates and math and rounding. Long story, but I'll put information in the description. But basically, the way that our primaries are organized means that the candidates who do well or win the early states tend to gain a lot of momentum and go up in the polls for later states. So Bernie has the momentum. He is the front runner. Let's check some polls. So looking at the latest national polls, you can see by the end of January, early February, Bernie overtook Biden as the frontrunner. And the latest polls have him leading Biden by a pretty good margin. Here's another graphic. You see Bernie leading in national polling averages. At this point, he has just one less delegate than Pete Buttigieg. Bernie's leading in individual contributions. So looking ahead, the next contest is the Nevada caucus, which is February 22nd. And Bernie is currently polling to beat every other candidate in Nevada. He is currently ahead by 7 percentage points. And then we have the South Carolina primary, which is on February 29th. According to this poll, Biden has 28%, and then Bernie comes in second with 20. So anyway, even a second place finish in South Carolina would be pretty good for Bernie, because then you go on to Super Tuesday, which has a lot of states and a lot of delegates at stake, and that is March 3rd. So Bernie is polling well in general for Super Tuesday, but most importantly, he is leading in the two biggest Super Tuesday states, which are California and Texas. In California, he has a 6-point lead, according to the latest UC Berkeley poll, and he is 2 points ahead of Biden in Texas, according to the latest UT-TT poll. Bernie also has the most diverse coalition of supporters. So despite the Bernie bro narrative that suggests that Bernie supporters are mostly straight white men, his support is a lot more diverse than that, and the Bernie bro thing is just a myth. Interestingly, he actually has more female supporters than male. He has the most LGBTQ+ support. This is a slightly older graphic, but it has some interesting information. 44% of Sanders supporters live in urban areas. Bernie has the most young support in terms of voters under 30. And you can see only Bernie has more female supporters at 53% than any other candidates. Bernie's supporters are actually also the least white, according to this graphic, at 49%. Then we have a national morning consult poll. Among Black voters, Bernie comes in second at 30%. And with Hispanic voters, Bernie is at 48%. And the next candidate is Bloomberg at 17%, so that is a really wide margin. Bernie Sanders leads all Democratic candidates in support from non-white voters. Bernie is backed by 28% of Black, non-white Hispanic, and Asian voters. So I think it's helpful to look at metrics like that because it proves that Bernie's message and his policy proposals connect with a lot of different people, a lot of different groups of voters, and most importantly, it shows that he is speaking to the needs and desires of everyday people. Also, his campaign is fully funded by the people in small dollar donations. Bernie has 0 billionaire donors. What we do have is over 6 million contributions from over 1.5 million people, averaging $18 a piece. So again, all of this culminates into the fact that Bernie is the only candidate who has a clear path to the Democratic nomination. Though it is likely that there could be a contested convention, which is complicated, but again, I'll put information in the description if you want to read about it. Okay, that's great, but who can beat Trump? In most general election head-to-head polls, the Democrats mostly all poll as beating Trump, but I think it's a little harder to rely on these general election polls because so much can change before November. But I think it's also important to look at who can excite voters and increase voter turnout, because that will be crucial. Who is popular with independents, who can win swing states, who can win back the Rust Belt, and of course, who can win the Electoral College so we don't have a repeat of 2016. Looking at this general election independence poll, Bernie beats Trump by 18 points among independents, which is the largest margin compared to the other candidates. So let's talk a little bit about why Trump won. I think a big part of his appeal was his anti-establishment, outsider, populist messaging. He is not a politician, he's a businessman, he's different. That's how he kind of portrayed himself. And to be honest, I think most people are sick of establishment politicians. The political establishment on both sides, Democratic and Republican, are very corrupt. They tend to serve the interests of their donors rather than fighting for the well-being of the people. But the thing is, and we are aware of this now, Trump was just pretending to be anti-establishment. He and his administration are unbelievably corrupt. He was a fake populist. So many of the promises that he made, he has completely contradicted himself and failed to meet those promises. Bernie, however, is the real thing. Bernie does not accept money from billionaires or special interest groups. He calls them out for their corruption, which is why Wall Street hates him. A lot of these wealthy industry leaders hate him because he's willing to call out their corruption. And in a lot of ways, Bernie actually is anti-establishment. And then again, you consider his diverse base, his strong grassroots fundraising, his volunteers. Bernie has the people power to take on Trump because vote blue no matter who probably isn't going to be enough to get enough voters out there. We need people putting in work, we need people donating, and Bernie and his campaign and his supporters have proven that they are a force to be reckoned with. The reality is no other Democratic candidate has nearly as much support, as diverse support, or as many volunteers as Bernie. Let's talk about money, baby. How are campaigns financed? Because when it comes to corrupt politicians, all you have to do is follow the money and you will see who they owe favors to. For example, if a politician receives money from health insurance executives, they are going to be anti-Medicare for all. They're going to fight to protect those private insurance companies. Or if you get money from fossil fuel executives, you're going to be against something like the Green New Deal. It's very obvious that our politicians are swayed by these donations that they get from certain industries. Then we have someone like Bloomberg, who is a billionaire who is literally trying to buy the election. He's been paying influencers and meme pages to promote him. He's flooding TV and the internet with constant ads. He's bribing people and organizations by just throwing money at them. And P.S., he is a racist and he was a Republican 5 minutes ago. But that's another story. The point is, while other candidates are in swanky wine caves begging rich people to max out their donations and write $2,800 checks, Bernie does not accept money from billionaires or super PACs. He doesn't go to these fancy fundraisers. He relies on the people, and people give him money because they believe him and they trust him. Bernie's campaign is entirely funded by regular people. His top donors, are teachers or people who work for Starbucks or Walmart or work in Amazon warehouses. And ultimately, that means that you can trust Bernie to fight for you. You can trust Bernie to fight for the policy positions that he has introduced. He doesn't owe anything to billionaires or rich corporate executives or super PACs. He only owes the American people what he has promised. And also, Bernie is consistent. Most politicians honestly change their stances on things based on what their rich donors want or based on what is polling well. But Bernie has always fought for what is right, even when it's unpopular, even when he is literally the only one fighting for it. You can look back and watch his speeches from 10, 20, 30 years ago, and he is saying, all of the same things. He will not give up on us, and we can trust him. So some people ask, instead of going for a progressive, somebody who's further left like Bernie, shouldn't we elect a moderate? Because some people believe that moderates are more practical. Moderates tend to believe in more incremental change, meaning instead of big plans, we take very small steps. But I think if we want to beat Trump, we need real change. We need policies that excite people and encourage them to get out and vote and make them believe that things really will be different. If we were to nominate a moderate, yes, we could possibly beat Trump, but if the American people don't see any change throughout that administration, if their lives don't improve, we leave the door open in the next election for another Trump or someone worse. Health insurance is still an expensive disaster. Wages are stagnant. People can't afford housing and we're drowning in debt. No actions are being made about climate change. We're still getting involved in dangerous interventionist wars. Some people think of the Obama era, for example, as the good old days, and they just want to go back to that time before Trump. But those conditions are what allowed someone like Trump to be popular and to win. As many people have said in different ways, Trump is a symptom of the problem. He's not our only enemy. He's not the entire issue. Yes, of course, we want to get him out of office, but we also want to address the root problems and make things better for people. People are angry and upset and tired of establishment politicians who tell us what we can't do. And that is a big reason why some people took a risk and voted for Trump, because they thought at the very least he would be different. Bernie, however, would be legitimately different, and he would actually fight for all of these issues. Still though, some people think if the race right now weren't split, if the votes weren't split between so many different candidates, if Bernie, the progressive, were running against one moderate, who would win? And actually a recent head-to-head poll came out, and it showed that Bernie Sanders would defeat each of the Democratic candidates in a one-on-one race. So in this graphic, you can see Bernie beats everyone. But then what about socialism? There's a lot of fear-mongering about socialism, and there's a concern that if we nominate Bernie, then the Republicans will attack him for being a socialist. But honestly, Republicans call every Democrat a socialist or even a communist. So for the record, Bernie identifies as a democratic socialist, but actually his policies are more like a social democrat. The Nordic countries, Finland, Norway, and Sweden, are social democracies. They have constitutional representative democracies, extensive welfare benefits, corporatist collective bargaining between labor and capital that is managed by the state, and some state ownership of the economy. Social democracy is basically a less terrible version of capitalism, but yes, it is still mainly capitalistic. So when you hear people ranting about how extreme and far left Bernie's policies are, they're not. They're not radical, they are rational. And many other countries have policies like these, like universal health care or free public university. Bernie is the furthest left compared to the other 2020 candidates, but let's compare all of them to other world leaders for some context. Bernie actually most closely aligns with SNP, the Scottish National Party, which is Social Democrat. Makes sense. And the other 2020 Dems land in the authoritarian right quadrant, which is more like the Lib Dems in the UK. So now I want to discuss some of Bernie's policies, because obviously those are the main reason why I support him so much. But first, some people have asked me why I support Bernie over Warren, because a lot of people seem to think that Bernie and Warren are very similar, which they're probably the most similar to each other, but they also have a lot of differences. So Warren has always been my second choice in this race, but I am with Bernie 100%. He is further left than she is, and I simply agree with his policies more than hers. Also though, Bernie will certainly last through the end of the primary in terms of fundraising and in terms of support and winning delegates. And because Warren hasn't done very well in Iowa or New Hampshire, and she's not polling very strongly in the next few states, I don't know if she'll even last through the rest of the primary. So if you support Warren for her progressive policies, if you support progressive policies in general, I would recommend supporting Bernie. Again, he is the front runner right now. He has the best chance of winning. And if you want somebody who will be able to carry those progressive ideas, Bernie is going to be able to do that. There are a lot more differences and reasons why I prefer Bernie over Warren, but generally that covers it. So first, let's talk about Medicare for All, okay? Medicare for All is universal health care. It is a single payer system, meaning that there are no insurance companies. The government would pay all of the bills. So currently there are tens of millions of Americans who do not have any health insurance. Medical bankruptcies are common even with insurance. GoFundMes are better at covering health expenses than insurance companies are because an insurance company's goal is to deny coverage as much as possible because at the end of the day, they want to maximize their profits and they do not prioritize helping people or saving lives. And for those of you in countries with universal health care, this is probably a no-brainer. Canada, France, the NHS in the UK. These are not perfect systems. I'm sure they have their flaws, but they cost less than our system and they're more effective. So it's pretty clear that a universal healthcare system would be a better choice. And the big question, how do we pay for it? With taxes, of course. But Medicare for All would cost less than our current system. It cuts out a lot of the bureaucratic waste. You think about how complicated it is to deal with insurance, and administrative costs are a big portion of our spending in terms of healthcare. And single payer healthcare would be a lot more simple because the government would be able to negotiate costs. So hospitals wouldn't be able to charge, say, $20,000 to deliver a baby. Also, the government would be able to negotiate prescription drug costs. And then in terms of healthcare, prevention and early intervention, meaning that people go to their regular checkups and they get things looked at before it's a major problem, costs so much less than last-minute emergency care. So that saves money, but also that would save so many lives because so many people don't go to the doctor when they need to. They don't go to their checkups because they can't afford to. A recent study found that a single-payer universal healthcare system would save more than 68,000 lives and more than $450 billion annually. And then in terms of the cost of individuals or families, the vast majority of people would pay a lot less for healthcare, and everything would be covered. You would have no monthly premiums, no co-payments, no deductibles, no in-network, out-of-network confusion. You can go to any doctor you like. So here's an example. A typical working family paid an average of $5,277 in premiums. Under this option, a typical family of four earning $50,000 would pay a 4% income-based premium to fund Medicare for All, which is just $844 a year, saving that family over $4,400 a year, and low-income families would not pay this premium at all. So yes, you are paying a little bit more in taxes, but the total cost is way less than you're paying to pay for your premiums and other healthcare expenses. If you want to hear more about Medicare for All, please watch John Oliver's latest episode of Last Week Tonight. It was great. Bernie also has a plan for medical debt forgiveness, which is huge because so many people are suffering under the burden of medical debt. There was actually a veteran who talked to Bernie at one of his events and said that he was close to wanting to end his life because of his medical debt, and Bernie actually was able to help him and get all of that debt settled. But medical debt is a very, very serious issue. 66.5% of all bankruptcies in America are connected to medical issues. Studies show that 500,000 people are bankrupted by medical expenses each and every year. That is just ridiculous. So again, if universal health care is an issue that is very important to you, Bernie is the best. And I believe that Medicare for All is the best plan. And then we have an issue like tuition-free public college. Everyone knows the cost of college in the US is astronomical, but most jobs these days require a degree, so people feel kind of trapped. Bernie has a plan, college for all and cancellation of all student debt. So this would guarantee tuition and debt-free public colleges, universities, HBCUs, minority-serving institutions, and trade schools for all. It would also cancel all student debt and place a cap on student loan interest in the future. How would you pay for it? The big question. Tax Wall Street gambling to cancel all student debt and pay for college for all. This would be a Wall Street speculation tax. It would basically be a 0.5%, 0.5% tax on stock trades, 50 cents on every $100 of stock. It is amazing that such a tiny tax can add up to so much money. So again, I don't think that these are far left or extreme ideas. Many of you in other countries may already have universal health care or free or very low cost university. And massive medical debt or massive student debt is probably unfathomable to you, but it's become the norm in America. But the thing is, these ideas are popular here. They're popular with Americans. They would save most people a lot of money, and that would improve our economy because people would have more money to spend. They would have more money to save up and buy homes or save for retirement. And Bernie has many other great plans, but this video is already too long, so I really recommend going to his website so you can read them in detail. Here's a few of my favorites: responsible foreign policy, Green New Deal, disability rights, housing for all, criminal justice reform, and racial justice. The last concern I want to address is, say you love Bernie's ideas, you love what he stands for, but you don't think that it's possible. How will he get these bills passed? And my question is, how will any Democratic president pass legislation with a Republican majority in Congress? Because any Democratic president would struggle, not just Bernie. One option is always executive orders, of course, and I'm not an expert in strategy in terms of passing legislation. But again, this is an issue that any Democrat would have to deal with. But I think something important to note is Bernie's whole message with his campaign. Not me, us. Bernie knows that he cannot pass these policies alone. No president can do that. The political revolution that Bernie talks about is about bringing power back to the people. So the strategy would be to put pressure on politicians to actually represent their constituents. Say the people in your state or district support Medicare for all, but you're fighting against it, probably because you've accepted money from the health insurance industry or the pharmaceutical industry. Your constituents are not going to be happy, and if somebody decides to run against you and that candidate does support Medicare for all, it's likely that you might get voted out of office. So the idea isn't just to make Bernie president and he can do everything. No, it needs to be a mass movement. We need to change Congress. We need to get control, of course. We need to elect politicians who represent us and reflect what we want, such as AOC. Bernie has the biggest movement behind him, so he, more than any other candidate, has the best chance of bringing people together to fight for these policies. Whoever you are, Bernie wants the best for you. He wants to help and protect you. Unless maybe you're a billionaire, you might have to pay more in taxes. Sorry. You'll still be richer than literally everyone else, if that's any consolation. At the end of the day, this campaign is about love and compassion. Truly. 99% of people have been suffering so that the 1% can profit. No more. We're done with that. We're gonna fight back. So if you want more information and you want to kind of keep up with the election and everything more, I have some leftist media recommendations. Bernie has a campaign podcast called Hear the Burn. I also listen to Rolling Stone's Useful Idiots podcast. It's very funny, but very informative. And then on YouTube, I like to watch Secular Talk, The Rational National, and The Humanist Report. Finally, at the end of the video, whether you support Bernie or not, I want to encourage everyone to please register and vote. This is so important that we all get involved. I'm going to be leaving information and links in the description, but you need to find out when your voter registration deadline is. You should see if you need to be registered as a Democrat to vote in the primary, if your state has a closed primary, or if you can be registered with any party, which would be an open primary. And then, of course, you got to know when election day is so that you can go and participate. Those of you who are already registered, please do a quick check online just to confirm that your registration is accurate and valid and that it's for the right party and your address is up to date. And of course, if you want to support Bernie specifically, please donate. Even $3 can make a huge difference. And you can volunteer if you can or want to. You can do phone banking. You can go to events and do that with other supporters. You can do text banking, texting for Bernie. You can knock on doors. You can talk to people in your community and just spread the word. If you watched this whole video, thank you so much. You're probably into politics. I know not everybody is, but I think that it is important that we normalize these discussions about politics. And yes, I know as a YouTuber, some people don't want to hear me or any of us talk about politics, but it is so important. It is something that I am really, really passionate about in my everyday life. And, you know, I'm willing to get some negative comments or unsubscriptions, whatever. This is more important than that. So I hope this video maybe taught you something new or got you excited or at least reminded you to check your voter registration. Okay, happy President's Day. I hope you're celebrating, or more so probably just enjoying the 3-day weekend. To any international viewers, thank you for watching, even though this is not really directly relevant to you at all. Okay, I've got to go grocery shop now. Okay, thanks, bye.